Hey you guys, this is a little off the normal range of subjects today, but I think you'll agree that it definitely impacts health, so it's within our purview of overall topics to cover. And what brought it up is that friends of mine of a certain political persuasion keep asking me, how could I support this part of the US Constitution, the second part of the Bill of Rights there, you know, that trying to speak generically. Don't you want to stop gun violence? How could you support that? You know, I thought you believed in peace. Don't you care about the children? What's wrong with you? So, okay, I have to admit, you know, in a way they're right, and I thought common sense might prevail, and people would just figure this out themselves, but apparently that's not going to happen right away. So, we can still see all the gun violence going on like these guys are talking about in the schools in the US, and not to mention these mass waves of violent crime in Europe and Scandinavia and things, often for religious reasons, screaming that it's for God and all that. Every day, it's just not in the major news, you know, all kinds of horrible violent crimes going on. So, okay, you guys, you win. I'm calling on the president and leaders of all the countries to end gun violence right now, like today. You could do it overnight. And I could stop there and you'd think, well, he's just another crazy person who's gone off the deep end or the shallow, whichever end you go off of, I guess. But there's one more detail I have to put in there. How are we asking the leaders of the countries to stop gun violence? It's really easy. There's just a couple little details. All you leaders have to do is encourage your citizens to do two things. The first one is absolutely commit to never engage in preemptive violence, aggressive, you know, unprovoked violence, like the crazy people running around the streets in the US right now, dressed up in black Halloween costumes and covering their faces so you can't figure out that they're who they actually are. And I mean, that's preemptive violence. That's crazy and that's malicious. So you never do that. If you're a normal good person and you want to help the world, you commit to no preemptive violence. Second of all, that's the first thing that the leaders of the country have to encourage the citizens to do. Really important. Second thing, for all the individuals, take care of your health, get in good shape, and get self-defense training. Unarmed, armed, every kind you can get if you want to, or have somebody around you get it at least. But if you're up to it and you're in good enough shape, get it yourself. If you're not in good enough shape, then encourage other people to do it. Unarmed self-defense or defense of others, armed self-defense, defense using firearms, defense, not offense. Very critical. And you know, those who are responsible and competent, they get this training and they get the equipment that they need for armed self-defense. And you have this happen on a mass scale. This is what the founders of America were, one of the things that they were so brilliant about. And later they realized everybody has to have these rights. It doesn't matter what supposed race you are, because, you know, I don't believe in race. I told you that many times. But all the people of all the groups have to have this thing of, if they're willing to be defensive only, peace-loving, never go out and, you know, try to kill people for your religion or some idiocy like that. But defensive, yes, including teachers, pilots on airplanes, all those things. So I would say, please, Mr. President, help end gun violence now. Encourage all the responsible citizens to be armed and trained in unarmed self-defense. And you know what? The people who are perpetrating these massive amounts of violent crime that are sweeping Europe and about to sweep the US a lot more too, they'd all find safer professions because they're not totally stupid. They don't want to get hurt in the commission of violent crimes. They just want victims. So most of them who are not completely crazy would give up the profession and go somewhere else and become something honest to actually do some good. And the ones who are crazy enough, they'd be stopped anyway, because, you know, you try to do something bad to some woman in Scandinavia, like has been happening all over the place up there, and it's all over. I mean, it wouldn't even go in one day. That popular hobby of attacking women in those areas would be over. And I think that would be great. And the result would be a much more peaceful environment everywhere. It would be, there'd be virtually no gun violence because the legal owners of firearms are almost never committing crimes. They're very peaceful as a rule, and especially if they're trained, which they all need to be trained how to be safe, gun violence would almost disappear. And you look at places where people are prevented from getting defensive weapons and gun violence is rampant. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to realize that. And the places where it's easy to obtain defensive firearms and training, where violent crime is really cracked down on, but not ownership of weapons, the gun violence just tends to go way down or disappear. So that's my suggestion. I'm joining you guys that say, please, Mr. President, for the children, stop the gun violence now. And the way to do that is get rid of these zones. I don't want to say any real catchphrases here. Zones where it's illegal to protect yourself. Get rid of those zones. Have armed protectors in the schools and on airplanes and everywhere that they're needed, and it'll just ruin the hobby and the profession of violent crime. That's my suggestion. I think it's a really good idea. And so everybody ought to be able to drop your labels and just realize the common sense of this, and that the founders of America were not complete idiots like a lot of the modern people are trying to say. They had some really great ideas, and it's just a matter of completely living them, which hasn't been done. So let's complete it now. And this also ties together with the idea in the beginning of the country that this is national security as well, because if you have an armed population that's trained and responsible and committed to non-violence other than in defensive situations, nobody's going to take over that country. So that's the reason it's so important. Anyway, now you know my point of view on that. I'm in favor of peace and stopping gun violence, and this is the only practical way I see to do it. And I think it could be done almost overnight. So let me know what you think, and see you next time.